John Gilroy just presented a way of getting some email lists. Do it one more email addresses. Do it one more
Okay.
time, and then we'll push it.
I want to go from theory to down in the ditches. The theory is get more guests. Oh, yeah, that's great. No, the reality is this. You find someone in your specific area. It could be satellites in space. It could be lawnmowers. It could be distance swimming. Make a list of 5 to 7 people. You find out as much as you can about them. Go to YouTube, go to LinkedIn, go to Twitter, find out what their interests are. And then you get their email address. You get their email address from a place called Voila Norbert, VoilaNorbert. The first 50 are free. And then you email them and you very carefully send them a text-based email talking about how your audience would love to hear from them and how their unique capabilities would benefit the audience that might help their business. And I use silly examples like Alex Lawn Cutting Service in Bethesda. We talk about new types of lawn mowers in suburban Maryland. It would benefit the audience of the Landscape Association of Virginia or something. So be specific about the benefits to them. Text-based email, real short and sweet, and don't be afraid to punch high.
John, that's how I actually do it with when I email my guests. I literally say why they would benefit coming on my show. I say, hey, listen, I think I want to talk about this. My audience is this. They would benefit from this.
Good.
Well, you're making a good point, Reed. Just remember, each of us has our own areas of expertise, and like I said, podcasting isn't really mine yet. I'm learning, but selling is. That's what I write about. That's what I teach. So what we're describing is something we call the sales business a WIFM, which stands for what's in it for me. And you really don't need to get real wordy. The moment, and John actually outlined that as he was explaining, that's what people need to hear, whether they ask it or not. Once they hear it, your chances are going to go up dramatically. So think it out before you make that, before you reach out. How about some more ideas? While we're warming up on ideas, because I have one more, but I don't know. I want your feedback. Podcastbrokers.com has reached out to me a few times, and they're a hit or miss with me, but they send out a treatment already of here's the bio. They don't do like cover photos, a photo, which I always like to put on my podcast. So, but it is it's a quick bio. It's questions you can ask, topics of expertise, and
actually,
that
reminds me.
But they're not all great. So what I do is I immediately try and search them out on YouTube or somewhere so I can hear them speak, because it's a paid service, I'm assuming, by that client. So just because they're pitching them doesn't make them good. But yeah, I'll be quiet. Anybody using them? Good, bad, ugly? No. What do you think,
Rob? There are actually 2 sites I use besides social media. There's a site called matchmaker.fm, and they're either if you want to be a guest on a show or if you are a show, and they have a picture of the person, they have their bio, they have their social media links if you want to see what social media they have. And then the other one is called Podcast Guest. And what Podcast Guest is almost like the first site, but you don't have direct contact with the guest. You send the question to this company, and then they go over your mail. And if it's appropriate enough, they'll send it to the expert, and then the expert will come back and contact you directly. And then that's how you communicate. But what's nice is in the bios, each guest has questions you can ask them if you don't have your own questions already. Like you can ask me about the X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Okay. So there are those services out there. Is anybody using them other than me? And I use them occasionally, but I'm looking for topics that fit, my branding. Because I'll give you some feedback on it. If I'm the only guy using it, they're not all that bad. If it's a topic in your area and you can get a look at them speaking, and usually they're not the greatest speakers, but that kind of motivates me. I can't take somebody who's a 2 out of 10 and make it a great podcast, but I like to think I can work with somebody who's a 6 or 7 and put some energy into it and give them up talking to before we go. and see what we can do. So anyway, I use it from time to time, Pod Brokers, and my problem is they're throwing too many potential guests at me, but I don't have trouble finding guests. It's just finding ones that can speak and are on my brand.
Hey, I'd like to hear what Charlie has to say. He's done this hundreds of
Yeah.
times.
Charlie, does this help?
I'm just looking for the mute button. That's all. I'm on a Zoom right now, Dan. No, you guys know I'm going to come at you with something out of the left field. So I learned totally out of left field, Rob and everybody. Sorry, I learned of something that I wanted to ask everybody if they had heard of today. Have you heard of something called Listen Notes?
Yeah, Rob is on Listen Notes.
I just heard of it yesterday, and I just wanted to get some feedback. I'm sorry to derail, but when when John threw it to me, I just had typed in Listen Notes because I wanted to bring it up. Does anybody know anything about it? I know almost zero.
What is it? What?
It's a podcast platform.
Yeah.
Rob, you're on it. I know your podcast is on it. What do you think of it?
I've never heard of it. I don't.
So let me tell you guys what happened.
It's a useful operation. I don't know of it. I probably just hit the button when I was launching of, if there's a name, go take my podcast and put it on there. So it was probably just bundled into a list somewhere. I have no idea. Don't know anything about it.
All right.
But I'm impressed upon it.
Here's what little I know, and maybe Reed, you can help. And I don't want to derail the morning conversation, but it is probably somewhat important for some of us to be aware of it. I took two podcast networking friends out to lunch yesterday, and Holly said, "Did you know, Ann, that your podcast is number 2 in its category on Listen Notes?" And I tend to ignore some of these aggregator engines, folks, because I've been around for a while and I don't really care anymore. And I think I'm making a mistake. I think there are a lot of fresh new platforms. I've heard of some wacky ones. One's built on aggregating ads that are tailored for you. One's built on Bitcoin. I think all of these are going to fail, but some of them are pretty interesting. And if one of my clients is number 2 in her category, shame on me for not knowing it. And then just like Reed may already know this, she doesn't even know. So she has to go in and claim her own show. So,
yeah, I've had that. I've actually had.
So I think it's fairly interesting and important. Sorry, go ahead, Reed.
I've actually had somebody send me something saying, "Hey, you're not on this podcast service. Why don't you claim your show on here?" I'm like, well, what?
I wouldn't spend all my day going around claiming it on all these services. Not a chance. But for one of my clients who I care about to be number 2 in a category, that's a thing she can use for marketing, right? I mean,
yeah.
Again, Rob's a better marketer than I am. I'm not a salesman, but that to me was like, darn it. I wish I had told her that. I'm glad we all learned about it. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. It may be that we can all use things like this, good ones that maybe Read Listen Notes is kind of a viable one that I've just ignored up until now.
I think I'm on Listen Notes, actually.
I'm gonna go look for the industry one that I do on golf. Who knows? It may be number 1 in the category because that's a pretty narrow little niche. The golf operator, not golfer category. So I don't know. But if anybody finds out about it, you can always get a hold of me. Sorry. But so that's enough. Stole enough air out of the room, Rob.
That's a really good tip, though. Very good tip.
Yeah.
Well,
Charlie,
brand new for me.
What about guests, Charlie? Want to hear about guests?
Oh, go ahead, Meg.
No, go ahead, Charlie.
No, Charlie, we want to hear from you. You're not stealing time. We're asking you, take time. You're a grizzled vet, whether you like it or not. So I like hearing from you.
We have sourced guests in a number of ways, but of course we're doing it for generally our clients know who John the guests are going to be. So for the one about George and Barbara Bush, those are all picked out by their grandson, and they know ahead of time. We don't have to source any of the guests, and they're sort of anxious to be on that show for the most part, although they're about to close down because they kind of run out of a couple of hundred of those, and they kind of run out of all the people who were fondly remembering George and Barbara Bush, if you know what I mean. So a lot of our clients, that's called All the Best. Obviously, sorry for political, the Lincoln Project, they know exactly who they want to interview. They don't need us. with Health Gig, we will help source the interviewee, but it's pretty specialized for John Warner's book treatment. Rob, you were talking about books. We haven't done any audio books, but we've done some additive series to help books along. And we have definitely looked for the proper guests. We were looking for an English accent, person for some of these. So ours have been, I'm not trying to dodge what you guys are asking, but we have somewhat easier job because most of our clients know pretty much exactly who they want. When I did Launch Podcast, Rob, in the old days, I'd take anybody who'd walk in the door, honest to God, because I was just trying to learn how to podcast. And it was everybody in that. I was doing a podcast about co-working. So anybody who was, walking through that space was eligible for the podcast. I could ask anything. So that's so for the most part, I haven't had to use, we've never used the service that Rob mentioned, and I'm not at all crazy about them. I'd rather do the homework ourselves for the most part.
Okay.
And what I think Reed said in the beginning, the social media, asking, engaging, that's the way we should all be doing it, because I want the engagement. It's all about me, folks. I love me. So I want that engagement. If Reed engages me on golf, then I'm going to engage back, by God. I know I have a listener because I got one engagement. But so if you engage with me, I'm going to happily try to get you on my show. And if you ask me after engaging, I'll be super into it. So I don't have too much to add on that. That's how I used to do it in the old days. Excuse me. Sorry.
So let me throw this question at you, and I have no skin in the game. I'm really curious. I'm just going to give you a case study. You've got somebody that appears to be not the greatest guest and close to your brand, but not quite there, with a large social media following. So my question is, are you turning that one down?
No, what you would do is you'd almost make the show about him. You let him choose the topic.
Got it. Well, okay. Meg, what were you going to say?
What point that you just made really resonates with me, because I find that the more you have an expert on the show, for me, the more boring and the more non-engaging it is. And I'll tell you why I think that, because there's such saturation out there in the market that every guest that you have has to make the listener want to go again back to your podcast and listen again. One bad guest, and I think it's really risky. And so how do you get that guest that's the best guest? I think part of it is you have to vet them very, very carefully. This is my view, that I can put a lot of people on the podcast, but what's going to make that guest a good guest? And, so you have to figure out. Now, for me, it's someone who's a very good storyteller and has lots of stories, regardless of the expertise. Somebody who is and tells it well. Okay, so I interview them, and yes, I'll throw out questions. I never get questions ahead of time. Never, never, never. And the other thing is that, because I want it to be organic, and the other thing is that if it's already out there, if what you're trying to ask them and what they tell you is already out there on websites and social media and whatever they're doing, what are you adding to the party? I don't think you're adding very much. And in this world of so many podcasts, I think vetting, and it's a hard thing to vet a guest. I mean, I spend time talking. I've had situation, and again, I don't have very many episodes up yet, but I will interview somebody and I can tell from the initial interview that it's going to be a dud. I mean, I can just tell. And I mean, I can talk to a pencil. It's, it's not that I have difficulty.
Meg, I got a
Quote
question
that.
for you. What do you do if you got a guest who you already have them on the show and in your mind at the end of the show, it's not going to work? Do you keep that episode, or do you delete it?
And I tell you what I do. I say in the beginning, and this is hard if they're like somebody who's a friend or somebody who's a connection, I say, I never know when I do an interview whether or not I'm going to keep this interview. And I want you to understand that it could be technical problems and it could not fit with other things I'm doing. And so I really appreciate your being a guest, but you have to understand that at the end of the day, I may not use I think there's no other way to get around it. And in 2 instances, I interviewed and it was a dud. It was just boring. And I thought, no, I'm not, just to have another episode, I'm not going to do it. And so that's how I handle it.
Yeah. You know, one of the
Pretty
things
good.
that I look for, Meg, when you say vet them out, for me, the kryptonite that I just can't stand is somebody who can't bring an answer in a reasonable period of time. That's the tough one for me. And that's one of the few coaching moves that I'll make beforehand, which is I actually wrote an article just on something else about it, but I call it a communication shot clock. We got one in basketball. We got one in football. That's the way this world works now. And we need a communication shot clock. And so I explained to them, let's aim, I could ask you, is there life on Mars? 45 seconds. Okay.
Yeah.
And I promise if we're going somewhere with it, I'll ask another question and we'll keep rolling, but trim everything down. And that's, just a move I make.
That's why I love the way my one podcast is structured is I have several questions and each question could be its own story.
Well, sure. I think that's what will make us successful or not, at least in my opinion. It's not the question. It's what you do with the question. It's that second and third question and where you dig and find, but that's the tough part. That's the one that requires the mental agility. You can write out a
Charlie,
question.
what do you want to say?
Meg, when I was starting out, and sort of a different side of the coin of what you just described, I was doing the one about co-working, and people would look at me. I think I've told this story before on this show. I'm famous for telling the same thing over and over again. And people would look at me and say, well, how long is this? Is it 10 minutes? Is it an hour? Is it half an hour? I said, it's as long as we're interesting. And the moment this isn't interesting, because you said organic, and you are so right. Everybody's nodding because these podcast hosts and guests are recycled far too much, just like our goddamn news is. And I'm not being partisan at all. It's just the same crap all day long. I want some fresh news. So if it's not organic, if it's not interesting, I turn the microphone off, period. And that's how I would tell people. I said, if you're boring, I'm turning it off. And that's up to you and your ear. I talk about it like a cocktail for the ear. We have to respect our listener and make it interesting. We have to make the voices interesting. The German lady said, do you think I should do a podcast? I said, my voice is so confusing. I said, yes, but you need a co-host because nobody's going to understand what you're saying, but you're great to listen to. So the organic part is so important for all of us because we are talking and there's going to be more of us talking. Look at the podcast listening report from Infinite Dial. It's more and more. And I think that's a blessing, but we have to respect each other and make quality audio with quality stories like Reed said, and short ones like Rob said. I like short podcasts. I'm in favor of the 10-minute podcast because an hour long, you better have some good stuff. If you're going to drone on like I do for an hour, that's terrible. That's horrible.
No, that's why hang on a second, John. That's why when I have my guests, they usually ask me ahead of time, how long? And I'm like, it depends on you.
Yeah. Mr. Gilroy.
I want to switch gears here to being aggressive and punching big guys. Don't be afraid. If someone's coming to you, that means they need the publicity. If you go after them, it means they have a following, and those are the best ones. And so I'll tell you a story from my youth. I did a show on NPR for many years, and this is in the days when Bill Gates was really the big name. And so I called up his PR people and I said, I want Bill Gates on the show. They said, no. I called him 20 times.
Damn.
And then after 20 times, they said, what do you want? I said, I want Bill Gates. We can't give you Bill Gates. Who can you give me? We'll give you Steve. I'll take Steve Ballmer. Bang. Got Steve Ballmer. So, I mean, hey, well, what the heck, So if there's someone like his Alex is targeting someone, what you can do is you can go after him aggressively like that. That may work. But I just think it's just, if people are coming to you, it means that they need the publicity. If you're going after someone else, they have a following, and that's really the best guests are the hardest ones to find. And so don't be afraid to go after someone who's a big name. Or, I've sent an email to Elon Musk trying to get him on my show.
Yeah,
I've
I'm
sent
thinking
email
I'm on my
to
show
Jeff
too.
Bezos. So
let me
go for it.
stay there, John. Coming back to that point I made, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I would think that has a massive following, and I don't think that he's very good on a podcast. I mean, I've never had a conversation with him, but I watched him on Saturday Night Live, and I was not impressed. I don't think he'd be a good guest. I think he'd be amazing in getting more people to listen to your podcast. So that's where I was going with my case study of, well, what if I got a guy who's got 300,000 Twitter followers and isn't a very good guest? Do I put him on the air?
Yes.
Yeah, John, your point is very valid, because I just sent an email out to the CEO of Disney, and I want him on my show.
Alex did too, huh? Yeah. We haven't heard from you.
Alex, did you hear back, or?
No.
So we take John's advice and we just keep hammering at it until someone says, okay.
We'll give you Mickey. We can't give you, okay.
Actually, I've sent him about 5 emails.
Yeah.
And no reply back?
Well, here's another tip too. This is a pro tip, is that if I call and I try to get Alex Shorb on my show, no, I'm busy. No, I'm busy. No. All of a sudden, Alex Shorb has a book out. It's tap dancing in the mountains. And then, yeah, I'll come on the show because I want to promote the book. And so we talked about this before, but that's another way. If you keep hitting, and then something, during this Zoom call, I got an email from a local cyber technology guy who just launched a book, and he wants to meet for coffee next week. So it's this book thing really gets people all excited. So
John,
Alex,
I got
get
a question for you,
Alex, get
actually.
your list of nifty 50 people you want. And, you can send out emails at Friday at 4:00, schedule them for Monday morning, and keep going after them. But there's opportunities, and boy, the book is an opportunity. A new launch is an opportunity, but people want that then.
John, I got a question for you.
Oh.
I reached out to a guest, and he said the only way he'd come on my show is if I've read his book and it's only about his book. What do you do about a guest like that? Do you go out and buy the book and read it? Or do you say, no, thank you?
Well, you have them send a publicity copy. That's what you do. And you read it. I mean, they have
Personally,
publicity
Reed,
copies.
in
don't
that
they?
situation, I would go buy the book, I would read it, and based on the content of the book, I would make the determination whether or not I want to proceed from there.
And
Thanks,
make it an
Alan.
ebook. Almost all of them are ebooks now. It's cheaper and
Yeah.
it's fast and comes right,
Yeah.
That's also happened to one of my hosts, Reed. And he said, it's a very famous person. And he said, I only want to talk about my book. They said, okay, we'll give you 50-50, but we're not going to only talk about your book. And it was a bartering technique. But I would say, totally unrelated, during this quarantine, I got connected to a guy on the West Coast named Stu Heineck. It's completely off topic, but he has a book and a whole philosophy on how to get the meeting every time. And it's not always repeated emails. It's phone calls. It's sending a sword with the guy's name engraved in it. It's sending a cartoon, a box of Belgian chocolates that he's never had since he was a kid. There are ways to break through depending on how much effort, you want to
put into
it. But I have two 21-year-olds, and I'm sick of, I emailed him, I texted him, he didn't call me back. I'm like, God damn it, there's a telephone. So Alex, I call for the person's assistant. I try to get in the front door. I'm old fashioned. We used to have these things called secretaries, and they were the secret door to everybody. Now they don't exist anymore, but there are still people in companies who can help you out.
Well, Charlie, there's assistants now.
Yeah, there are. I don't have one, but I'd like one. Could you help? No, just kidding. But
No,
there
I mean,
are assistants now.
One
Hey,
of the
Charlie, I'd
other
like to
sites
pick up
I
on what
came
you just
across-
said. I can tell you, I've gotten into a couple before I had a podcast, some important calls. Totally with you on if you want to hide behind an email, it's so easy and I do it all the time, but
So do I.
it's so easy to be rejected on an email.
Mhm.
It's a little scarier to make the call. But what I
Mhm.
started doing was I started making my calls at 5 after 5. Before there
5
was a
after
pandemic.
5.
Yep, because the
Well, you're making your call right before closing
administrative
time.
assistant was going home, and the person I was looking for was frequently still there, and they'd pick up the phone, and it's a way I would kind of circumvent the screen.
Brilliant. You know what
That's
real
very
estate
brilliant.
agents do? They have an app so they can call and you don't answer and it goes straight to your voicemail because they don't want to talk to you. They only want to leave you a message.
Okay.
They don't want to spend the time talking to you live. They
Actually,
just want to get straight to your voicemail. Isn't that weird?
I actually found a website that lists everybody from radio personalities to celebrities, television personalities. And it's basically it's like a speaker bureau. I forget what it's called. And basically you send them an email, say, I want this, this, and this person. Can you contact them, tell them what you want? And basically they come back to you and say, either they're busy or they'll come in and they'll do it. And it's and one of the questions is, are you going to pay them or is it for free? What's in it for them? And then you fill that out and then you hear back from like the assistant to that person you want to get a hold of.
Well,
everybody's making a lot of great points, and hopefully I'll be able to build on every point, and I'll do it by the failures that I've experienced so far. Reed, I have also approached Michael Eisner. I tried to use the hook that he's a graduate of the same college that I went to, so I tried to play the alumni card the best I could. And the only email that I could find for him was through his foundation. And I wanted him to talk about his foundation. So
actually, Alex, I went after the current CEO of Disney, Bob Chapek.
Oh, excuse me.
And what I did is I typed in his name and contact, and it came up with, there's a whole website for CEOs and heads of companies where you can actually put in their name and it'll give you their entire contact info for you.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll give another example of an area that I failed. But I would say I learned maybe just a little lesson that I messed up on. I was going after Steve Bisciotti, who's the owner of the Ravens.
Yeah.
I went on to the Ravens website and sent a basic email, a tailored email. It wasn't a form letter, and weaseled my way up to his administrative assistant. And Charlie, like you were saying, I could tell very quickly I am talking to the right person. So I threw everything in the kitchen sink at this, and I would say after a couple of weeks, I got a very polite no, just a class organization in dealing with them the whole way. In a couple of weeks, I hope this doesn't get me in trouble. I look at everybody's time as you can put a dollar figure on it, and Bisciotti being worth billions. I obviously don't have the checkbook to be able to compete with that. But I sent an email to his assistant saying I would make a $500 contribution to the charity of his choice for 30 minutes of his time.
I've done that.
I got a phone call from her, and he was in the background, and I made the error of saying, you know what, I know, and she said, look, we just apologize. We just don't do media, and they even talked about they did a segment about social justice about a year ago, and they said, she said it was like pulling teeth. This is just not what he does, and we apologize. And I made the mistake, and other people have kind of touched on this. What I should have done is I said, I understand you don't do podcasts. May I come into your office and spend 15 minutes with you, just introducing myself and seeing if this might be a fit for somebody else you know.
Yeah. Well, the good news is, Alex, I think you've established enough of a relationship with that individual that you could do that next. You could make that pitch next week if you wanted to. I think with what you've described, you made yourself memorable, and I congratulate you for that. I want to throw a thought out at you of more of a, not necessarily a sales idea, but just to remind you something. And again, I can be wrong on this, but I would never go. I don't go that angle. I am a network person. I know from it being in a career network, I help people who are in career transition. The numbers are over 80% of a job placement is found through a network connection. Yet all we hear are people, I reached out, I'm sending emails, I'm trying to call them. Well, you can, but when you make a network connection, that's really going to be you. If you're going for a big fish, and you did it again, Alex, I would be trying to find other individuals within the organization and sort of climb up that rank. So you're not just sending an email into the office, but you've got somebody fighting for you in the office who's trying to move you in. Now that was an extreme case you described, but for most Eisner, I'm telling you, there's people, if you look, I don't know how active you are on LinkedIn, but there's somebody connected to somebody who's connected to somebody who knows Eisner. And if I went after Eisner, I would be going that route and not directly emailing Eisner. Last thing, I'll be quiet on this, but do you know how many, everybody who's an author wants a book reviewed by the New York Times. Do you know how many pitches for books the person at the New York Times gets each week?
Oh, I've heard it's astronomical.
Reviewed. Yeah. It's over 1,500.
Yeah, it's a
emails.
horrifying number.
So so she selects all and deletes. You just don't go that route. Go ahead, Meg.
I just have a question. It's tangentially related, but it's not. And that is that my podcasts were all live. Then when the pandemic hit, that's when I did this hiatus. I'm trying to get inspired and get back into it. And I'm a little intimidated by the fact that it has to be a remote interview a lot of times. We don't need to talk about that now, but the mechanics of how you have it, whether you're on Zoom and you record the audio, and I guess it's more of a technical question, but it's a different kind of interview if it's going to be remote. And it would be good to know more from you guys about how you handle that.
Charlie,
can I make a suggestion?
Are you showing
Rob?
us a straw, or is that are you your hand?
My
up?
hands up. I have three things. Can I make a suggestion, Rob? I think that I could go on about remotes, Meg, for a couple of hours because we have tons of solutions here, and I don't want to weigh this down. We responded heavily to the something that we've been doing prior to the quarantine, and so remotes is something that we talk a lot about here. I wanted to just, if I could quickly get back to Alex for just 1 second. I was trying to get a permit for a building project about 20 years ago. And you know what I did? I camped out with donuts every morning at the permit inspector's desk. And there was mountains of paper, and she just knew I was going to show up every day. And I was smiling, and I didn't say shit or any of those things. Sorry, Rob. And eventually she just smiled at me and said, okay. Took about a month. It's not a fun way to do it. But Rob or somebody said, there are other people at Disney. For example, I'm a huge illustration fan. There's a guy named Jim Korkis who wrote books about it. I went to Disney Institute with my wife 20 years ago and took a class in animation. And I met Jim Korkis. I bet Jim Korkis knows somebody who knows Michael Eisner. If you got to that lower rung, I think that was you, Rob, or maybe you, Reed. That is a really effective way to get involved. You also might find that Jim Korkis or your Jim Korkis is a really interesting interview that hasn't been found yet. I bet you Michael Eisner is a pretty popular guy. I'd love to interview him, and I don't even have a show anymore. But there are a million Imagineers who are really interesting people. And the final thing on that, there are a lot of interesting Disney podcasts, and those guys, those hosts who are not famous, who are looking for guests and listeners, D23, a couple of the other ones, they do know all of the Disney people. They are completely plugged into the 50th anniversary because that is a conduit for Disney to get free advertising and promotion. So there's a back channel through fan casts of podcasts of Disney because all of those people have VIP entrances to the park. Because I'd love to go travel again. I can't, and I don't want to. And so I listen to those now because I'm pathetic.
Good.
But that's all. I'd be happy to talk about remotes, but Rob, I don't think there's enough time.
No, I actually I'm telling you that we've got our topic for next month, and we can all show up with some thoughts and ideas on that. And let's give that one some room to prep. But I think it's a really good point. Interestingly enough, Meg, I almost never go live. I'm always remote. So because I launched during the pandemic, so I don't know the live part of it the way you do. So
Rob, I think we're all remote here.
Well, we are now, but ish. Although I've done 2 lives.
I've never done a live
screwed
yet.
up my microphone, by the way, because I wasn't used to being live. My guest sounded great. I sounded like I was in a barn somewhere.
Also connected to that, just for next time, is the choice of whether you're audio only or whether you're including video in that, because that's another decision.
That's a whole nother topic.
Meg?
We're
That's a
so
whole other- I
video
realize.
heavy.
I know.
Meg, I do both. I do audio and then I throw it up on YouTube.
Because you brought it up, Meg, I like doing. I only use the audio. If I see something I like on the video, I'll grab 90 seconds of it. But I like the video because I don't want. I want to see the guest. I want to be able to respond to the guest. It's the next best thing. I mean, imagine if I'm recording you this way. I just don't
That's a
get
good side of you,
flavor.
Rob.
Is that good?
That's good.
Actually, Rob, I was
As
Creepy
soon
told
as
if you
I
had a
that,
turned
smiley
around, I
face
went,
back there,
insert
dude.
joke here. Okay, but yes, all right. But we'll talk more about that. I think it's a rich topic. Bless you, Reed.
thank you.
Oh,
I was told the one guest I'm going after, Temple Guardian, she will only do a audio version because it's the way she feels about it, because people can't see you on the podcast. They can't see your facial expressions and all that. So that's just a heads up. You will have people who will say, I had a guest who told me because of her reasons, she'd prefer not to do video, but she could see me. So I'm like, that's fine. I'll just throw you up audio wise.
We do both audio and video podcasts, but even if I'm doing an audio one, we'll do video if we can, just so we can see each other. But I'm not going to produce that video. Are you going to trying to get Temple Grandin, the horse trainer?
Yes.
Did you see that movie? I'm sure you saw that movie. I cried. That was a gorgeous, gorgeous movie. I'm so envious of you to get a chance to talk to her. What an amazing person.
what
Wow.
movie you're talking about?
I can't remember the name of the movie. It's her life story, the Temple Grandin, I think. Just autistic, but amazing story. I'm sorry, you just have to Google it, I guess, but really, really moving tale. Of
I think
someone
the name is Temple Grand. I think
Of
the
the
name
movie?
of the movie.
It might be. It was really well done, and I looked her up afterwards, Reed, because I thought she was such a fascinating person, and I
Yeah.
read a bunch about her as well. So
For what I
way to go.
understand
Yeah.
about her, she likes direct contact. So if you want
That
to
would make
contact her,
sense.
find her go directly to her, not
Yep.
to her people.
Yep. That would make sense, probably. Anyway, I think I'm being summoned by people who want to ask me questions, so I'm going to go away. I wanted to invite you guys again, if anybody ever wants to come down and see this place live. And then, Rob, I'd be happy to meet in Bethesda. When we started this, we actually met at a bar in Bethesda when people did things in person. And we have a huge conference room. If you guys ever want to, we can even be socially distanced. Yeah, I mean, I have an enormous conference room. I would love to see you. I just miss people. So if ever you guys want to try a live one, I'm totally
Where are
up
you,
for it.
Charlie?
Podville is now down at 19th and M. We're about 2 blocks down 19th Street from the DuPont Circle Metro, and there's parking all over the damn place.
I can attest to the
Yeah.
fact that I
You're
went
in
down
Maryland,
there
right?
and had a cup of coffee with Charlie, and
Yeah,
the
man.
parking was easy, and it's a hop, skip, and a jump, and it's a beautiful facility. Really nice, very impressive.
You should come down and
may
see the
come
White
down.
House set, Rob. We have this set that the White House spec'd out. Please don't share this. They spent about 20 grand just on this set. It is unbelievable. They have a podcast called the 1600 Sessions. That's both audio and video. And the fresh episodes that we've produced for them in this season are out now. But it's really cool to look at this set that they built. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, a cup of coffee. I have a friend who comes and uses us for co-working because we got a lot of space here and there are not a lot of people in this building. So if you're in the neighborhood, please give me a shout. I'd love to show anybody around. And Rob, you're always welcome. And I got to catch up with you on my book sometime.
Give us the Charlie look on the way out.
Yeah, I will. Ready, everybody? Is it me or is it? Wait, I can't tell. Goodbye.
No, we can tell the other one. It's easy to tell the other
You know,
one.
Rob, I'm gonna have to go too.
All
I got
right.
a shower. I head north.
All right. Well, don't everybody run off because we got just a couple more minutes, and I want to. But if you got to go take your shower.
Later,
All
everybody.
right, Reed. Nice seeing you.
Rob, I'll talk to you later about my book. I'll probably be writing in a week or
Okay.
two.
Cool.
All right.
All right.
Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Okay. And I just want to say one thing just for everybody. And this is just so you know, if you don't know Reed, Reed does a podcast on autism and he's on the spectrum. And I've spent some time talking, a lovely, wonderful guy, but occasionally if he gets in a little bit, I just want everybody to know I think it's a really wonderful thing that he's a part of this group, but occasionally, as he'll tell you, he can get awkward. And that's just part of the beauty of Reed. So just want everybody to know that.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Rob, how do I reach him? I was going to have him on my podcast. Rob, Reed,
Yeah,
can you give
I'll-
me his information?
yeah, shoot me an email and I'll shoot you his.
Okay, because I was going to invite him on my Hidden Struggles channel.
Yeah, I
was the
actually had him on
person-
my podcast. He's a good guest. He does
Okay.
well.
Who was the
Okay.
person that said listen notes? Who told us about that?
That's
was that
Reed.
Reed?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, thank you, Reed. Even though you're gone, I just
Yeah.
found out I'm 1.5% in my community
Well, there you go.
on Listen Notes. I have a podcast about recovering from religion.
Yeah.
And that podcast is pretty hot.
Well, you got my attention already. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm looking for people on that show. I don't really have a hard time finding guests for that show. Because we just had, when we were on John Dellon. Do you guys know John Dellon? He's the he's the top ex-Mormon activist on YouTube. So he was on our show. He had us on his podcast twice, and he's been on our podcast. So we're looking for people who are recovering from religion.
Well, I would think Leah Remini would be your
Yeah.
A+ guest.
Well, yeah, she's been in our community. I just haven't reached out to her.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't think
John-
she's shy
well,
about talking
John-
about it either.
Well, John knows her. Maybe he'll put me in contact with Leah.
Yeah.
I haven't gone that route just
Yeah.
yet. But anyway, that's what
Yeah.
my story is.
I push back again, and I'll tell you, if you've never developed relationships with publicists, think about it, because most publicists, a campaign, if you don't know the dollars and cents behind it, most of the good publicists won't touch anyone for less than $2,500, $3,000 a month. Campaign usually has to be a minimum of 4 months. So in a sense, there's vetting already going on. You've got somebody that's taking whatever they've done very seriously and putting money behind it. So you're dealing with people that, they're not pretenders. Amazon, how do you know whether this book sold more than 5 copies? If somebody's got a publicist, they're taking whatever they've done fairly seriously. So it's probably a guest with some reach. Anyway.
How do you find the publicists? Is there a specific method you have of?
Well,
finding
because I'm in the book world, I know the publicists from that world. However, I would probably go to the publishers and ask them. They usually have their vetted list of publicists that they're recommending to the authors they're signing, and pick a Meg. You can email me on the side, and I can give you a name or two. But if I was coming at it blindly, I would just kind of go into I'm not so sure I'd go into Simon and Schuster. I have books with 5 different publishers. I'm not boasting, but I'm saying the bigger ones, and not surprisingly, are the more dysfunctional in the way they communicate, and they're very difficult to deal with. So don't shy away from a mid-level publisher. My publisher is you may never have heard of them. One I like, Barrett Kohler, and yet they've sought. Brian Tracy is there. I'm trying to think of somebody you'd know. Ken Blanchard is a Barrett Kohler author. This is a 1 million book seller. And maybe, you start getting in with a Barrett Kohler, they may hook you up with a Ken Blanchard if he fits your space. And that would be, I'm sitting here going, why haven't I reached out to Ken? Ken's actually read my book and wrote a recommendation for one of them, or a testimonial, and I've never had him on my show. So that's how stupid I am. Thanks for having me in this conversation. But I'd reach out to them. They have like 23-year-old publicists, that are overwhelmed, that are trying to not disappoint the authors that have been signed. If it's a good podcast and you're in, remember that book got vetted, because they'll get 1,100, 1,200 submissions for 80 or 90 books they're going to publish. So already, if you've got one of their authors, they've vetted that person out, and that's good content, somebody they think is viable. So I don't like shoving everything to the book world, but that's my area. That's my vertical market in a sense.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Rob, are you publishing books for people?
I help people get published. And it's sort of a little side kind of hobbyish, but I mentor authors in development, and then I'll take the book and at least walk it in. Remember that network connection thing? I can't guarantee that my publishers will publish it, but I can guarantee it won't go into that massive orphan file like the old resume pile that's going in cold, or some of these emails that are going in cold. The chances of really having somebody look at it and study it are just minimal. If at least if you've got somebody saying, I know this person, Meg, she's a good person and smart, take a look at this. They'll look at that. If it doesn't fit, they'll tell you. But I'd rather get shot down that way than delete. I'm getting 200 emails today. It's another
Really?
pitch.
Do you think that self-publishing is a good thing?
Sorry.
Do you think that self-publishing is still a good thing?
Oh
Or you
yeah.
think
Oh yeah.
it's a good thing?
It's come a
Okay.
long way. 15 years ago it wasn't. Now
Okay.
you can you think of it. And I won't go too deep into this, but if you want to hear this, we can talk about it next time. But think about it like going down a cafeteria and putting things on a tray. You could put every single thing that a conventional publisher would put on that tray. A lot of that's now called hybrid publishing, but it's just a cost for it. So you could have the exact same distribution that Simon and Schuster would give you. You just pay for it. And what you're doing is basically betting on yourself. And I know people that John McKay, Swim with the Sharks, that was a self-published book. Now it was picked up, but that's after he sold, tens of thousands of them and pocketed 95% of the money from it. Wasn't paying a royalty. So I know a lot of big authors that will actually choose self-publishing because they know they can move their own book and they can get every single thing the conventional publisher gives now. So sorry if I went on too long, but
And
be happy
the
to
other
talk to you
thing,
about.
the
Sorry?
other thing is conventional publishers are the bigger they are, they're pretty notorious from what I hear of not doing very much marketing and promotion for
Exactly.
any individual book.
Yep.
So you do have the imprintur of, of a well-known publisher, but beyond that, it doesn't really mean very much. I have a lot of friends who are
Yeah,
writers.
it's all about
and-
distribution.
Yeah.
So even
That's
when I make a deal with a publisher and and they'll go, and we're thinking of giving you this advance, and it's like with my clients that I'm representing, it's like, John, don't get upset, but Mr. Gilroy doesn't want an advance. An advance,
I
so
don't.
means they're just not going to pay you royalties until you pay back the advance. So that's a shell game. That's your money. They're just giving you and then not paying you while the book sells. I don't negotiate advances. I negotiate how many books they're printing, because when they print 10, 15,000 out of the gate, they're stuck with them. So they'll already elevate your book to, they've got certain slots in the bookstores, but they'll elevate your book because they don't want to eat them. You don't pay for them when they don't sell. So a lot of it has to do with the negotiating the deal. But to your point, Meg, no matter who you're with, once a book is published, I tell my authors, that's our job to sell our book. Don't count on the publisher. They're churning them out every week. You're hot for 4 or 5 days, and that's it. They've got other books to move. But that's why I reach out to that little miniature publicist who's up to his or her ears, and you're helping them out because you're getting that author off their back. And they're saying, see what we set up for you. So they're looking for that type of connection, I believe. All right. Anyway.
One thing, Kathy, there's an organization called Recovering from Religion. I guess you must know about that. I don't know if you do or not.
Yeah, I'm one of the resources on this.
Oh, there you go.
Right.
I'm thinking as I'm giving this to you, maybe that's her organization. I don't
But that is not mine. But I did get in contact with them, and
Yeah.
they actually have my husband and I, our YouTube channel as a resource. Yeah. So
Good.
because we're only one segment of the religion. Because there's a lot of different religions.
Yeah.
But we have one segment of it.
Oh, that's a gutsy topic. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
I'm
I
a
didn't
little
realize
safer
so
than
many
that.
people. I didn't realize so many people were interested in that topic. But it's my personal life experience. So
Well, that's what launched it, but it
yeah,
takes
my
off from
husband
there.
is he's our subject matter expert because he used to work at the world headquarters of our particular religion, and then he was also part of the leadership in our congregation. So he knows all about that, and he is our our SME.
Excellent.
And I'm the
I-
video person.
All right, it's the seminar guy in me that says, I know we got places to be. I always like to start us on time, end us on time. We got a nice topic for next month. We'll keep building that roster. Make sure you signed up for the Facebook page. We'll get the recording up there as well. Really grateful that everybody stops by and has so much great input. Let's just keep going. Let's keep doing it. Let's keep getting better. Okay.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Thanks,
guys.
Rob.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.